we've reached beyond the halfway point in book 3 of the Ethics. So Spinoza has assembled all of the ingredients that he's going to use in order to give a mechanistic account of the passive emotions. That is to say, the emotions that a person experiences when his knowledge of the world is limited to the first type of knowledge, so that he judges everything by how he is affected by things. The main ingredients then are random associations of ideas, attributing fictitious causes to things through the imagination. The primary emotions are love, or rather pleasure and pain. Love and hate are defined to be pleasure and pain together with the idea of an external cause. If you love something, you will try to enhance the power of that thing because your own power will thereby be increased. Similarly, if you hate it, Spinoza has a very simple account of conflicting or vacillating emotions, because for Spinoza, we are composite beings rather than unitary. There is no Cartesian homunculus governing things by an exercise of free will. Rather, the ideas in the mind are to be thought of really as competing forces. So similarly, we'll see that Spinoza has no problem with the idea of acrasia. This was the thing that so troubled the Greeks, the fact that we often see the better and follow the worst. Although we may know where our best interests lie, we may act in ways that are contrary to our best interests. He's augmented this picture with an account we saw last day of how we tend to imitate the emotions of others. And this, this is the cause of the passive emotions of compassion and mimetic desire, where we see other people desire things and we ourselves then desire them as a result. And he uses that to explain things like honor and shame, honor or glory and shame. Honor, he says, it arises when we see other people taking pleasure in our actions, and that causes us to take pleasure in ourselves, and conversely for shame. And he also fits ambition under this umbrella. Ambition is the endeavor to cause other people to imitate our emotions. And he explains how we can be troublesome to each other as a result. So he has this utilitarian calculus of pleasure and pain, and what he's now going to do in this sequence of propositions, starting at proposition 33, is to try to use this to explain sexual passions, romantic love, jealousy, and how romantic love turns into hatred. So we'll start off then with proposition 33. Um, when we love a thing similar to ourselves, we endeavor as far as we can to bring it about that it should love us in return. To my mind, he doesn't quite establish this proposition. He says that we will endeavor, so if we love somebody, we will endeavor to ensure that that person is pleasurably affected because that will enhance our enjoyment. And he cites Proposition 29, which which we saw last day. If we increase another's pleasure, we will thereby increase our pleasure in ourselves as a cause. This is the emotion which he calls honor or self-complacency. But it doesn't quite follow that we will bring it about that the other person will love us in return. You could imagine anonymously being an anonymous benefactor of the object, of the lab object. And there is, I think, something missing here. The sexual emotions, I don't think, can be satisfactorily explained in the framework that Spinoza has developed, essentially because our sexual desires are driven by something other than the conatus, the endeavor to preserve our being. But let me put that aside for the time being, work through the propositions, and then we'll come back to speculate on how Spinoza might fill that gap if he had some knowledge of, say, evolutionary biology. But before proceeding, I'd just like to draw attention to this turn of phrase. I think he has chosen it deliberately in anticipation of Proposition 19 in Book 5. This was the proposition which Goethe professed to be flabbergasted by, because it says, he who loves God cannot endeavor to bring it about that God should love him in return. So he's setting up a contrast here, which he's going to develop later on. Moving on then, proposition 34. The greater the emotion with which we conceive a loved object to be affected towards us, so we're assuming that we've brought it about, that the loved object will love us in return, the greater will be our complacency. Remember, self-complacency is the pleasure we take in our own power of activity as a result of increasing the pleasure of the loved object. So here he's just referring to Proposition 30 last day, which states that when we take pleasure in the fact that when we have pleasurably affect something similar to ourselves, we regard ourselves with pleasure. So he calls that self-complacency or honor if other people see us as the cause of this increase in pleasure of the loved object. Okay, so he goes on then to give an account of sexual jealousy. That he is talking about sexual passion becomes clear in the following scholium, where he says that this condition generally comes into play in the case of love for a woman. Um, the statement of the proposition is that if anyone conceives that an object of his love joins itself to another with closer bonds of friendship than he himself has attained to, he will be affected with hatred towards the loved object and with envy towards his rival. Okay, so this is going to be an instance of conflicting or mixed emotions. And as I mentioned at the outset, Spinoza generally has no difficulty in giving an account of these states of mind. So what he's saying here, what happens is that as a result of the previous proposition, the lover's pleasure in himself, his self-complacency, is going to be further increased by the fact that the rival is also taking pleasure in the love object. Okay, this is mimetic desire. But on the other hand, the fact that the loved object is attracted towards the rival is now going to check this emotion of pleasure in the lover, so that as a result, the lover is going to be afflicted by a contrary emotion towards the loved object and envy towards his rival. Envy, Spinoza has defined just as a species of hatred where we experience pain at the advantage of somebody whom we hate. So jealousy, as we know, is a real witch's brew of an emotion because of these conflicting tendencies towards pleasure and pain that are experienced at the same time. So this is the occasion of his definition of jealousy. And he just recapitulates here the mechanisms that are at play in giving rise to the conflict of emotions. He also adds that a jealous man is not greeted by his beloved with the same joyful countenance as before, and this also gives him pain as a lover, as I will now show. So he states another proposition: he who remembers a thing in which he has once taken delight desires to possess it under the same circumstances as when he first took delight therein. So he refers here to proposition 15. If you click on the link, you'll find that what proposition 15 states is that anything can accidentally be a source of pleasure or pain. And the accident he's referring to is an accidental association of ideas. And for Spinoza, memory is an accidental association of ideas. This harks back to about proposition 17 or 18 in book 2. So the memory of having an unalloyed joy in the pleasure in the company of the loved object, okay, generates an emotion of pleasure, which is now tainted by the emotion of pain if the jealous man is not greeted by his beloved with the same joyful countenance. So a suggestion here, I think, that it's intended to be an explanation of how infidelity in a sexual relationship is liable to cause more conflicting emotions. A lover, the corollary states, a lover will therefore feel pain if one of the aforesaid attendant circumstances be missing. Okay, he's just restating it, and this gives him an opportunity to define a general emotion of regret when a past memory of pleasure is conflicting with a current reality. So I said that at the outset that Spinoza's account of the sexual passions is, I think, rather unsatisfactory for the reason that our sexual desires can't really be reduced simply to the conatus. But it's very easy to imagine how Spinoza might fill that sort of gap in his in the framework that he is developing, because it's entirely naturalistic and can easily accommodate advances in scientific knowledge about human behavior. So let me just take a few minutes to speculate on how he might do that if he were to take into account some, say, elementary knowledge of evolutionary biology. He would attribute a conatus to genes or to alliances of genes with, say, to genomes, as well as conatus to individual human beings. So the picture here he has outlined rather sketchily in book 2, and I'm thinking particularly of the Scholium to Lemma 7 in book 2, where he indicates how the whole of nature can be viewed as a hierarchical organization of simple bodies composing more complex bodies, such as individual cells making up tissues, tissues making up organs, organs making up individual human beings making up societies, and the whole hierarchy constituting the single animate being, which he thinks of as the body of God. That's God under the attribute of extension. So individual bodies in this hierarchy are now competing with each other, now cooperating with each other, always in an endeavor to preserve their own being. So this would stretch from, say, the COVID virus to whole societies. All of these individuals, or modes of substance, as he calls them, are playing by the same rules on the same playing field, endeavoring to persist in being and to increase their own power of activity. So sometimes competing, sometimes cooperating, and it's clear that there are interactions of this type across levels as well as within levels of the hierarchy. For example, the knowledge of the second kind, which the paradigmatic example is scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge is something that can only be cultivated or transmitted through a social organization existing above the level of the individual. Um, Similarly, the individual will subordinate himself to the state's conatus, okay, will agree implicitly to obey the laws of the state in return for the rights that the state bestows on the individual, such as property rights. Individual human beings, for Spinoza, unquestionably are more free to be themselves in a state, a civil society, than in a state of nature. So the same sort of mechanism, I imagine, Spinoza would use to account for our sexual desires, and say that it is, assuming that he had read, Richard Dawkins, that it is driven by the conatus of genes or genomes operating in a different part of this hierarchy, which in its entirety makes up the body of God. Good. I hope that will be tolerated as a break from this relentlessly Hobbesian account that Spinoza is giving of the human passions, the passive emotions. Next, Spinoza goes on to give an explanation of how love turns to hate. He says that, first of all, that desire arising through pain or pleasure, hatred or love, is greater in proportion as the emotion is greater. All of these emotions stimulate the imagination, which attempts to conceive of things and circumstances which increase the power of activity and which remove or destroy things that interfere with our power of activity. And we've seen that in Proposition 28. Not only do we attempt to imagine these things, but we attempt to bring them about. And the greater the degree of disturbance, the greater the pleasure, the greater the pain, clearly the greater the desire will be to act on those emotions. So I don't think we need to linger on the proof that he offers here. So now he says in Proposition 38, if a man has begun to hate an object of his love, so that love is thoroughly destroyed, he will, causes being equal, regard it with more hatred than if he had never loved it, and his hatred will be in proportion to the strength of his former love. So the former love is going to incite him to action, okay, to increase the pleasure of the beloved, to bring it about that the beloved loves him in turn. But all of this is now going to be checked, okay? If the object of his love has become an object of hatred, whether through jealousy or infidelity or whatever, which means that the man now has to fight against all of his prior efforts to enhance the emotion of love, and consequently, the hatred that he's now going to experience for the object of love is going to be amplified by the need to struggle against all of the emotional impetus that he has felt in the opposite direction. So this is Spinoza's account of how romantic love turns to hatred. But the fact that it does turn to hatred is something that I think most of us, many of us, know from our own personal experience. So one last proposition for today, which is more of interest for the Scoldian than the proposition itself. He says that he who hates anyone will endeavor to do him an injury, unless he fears that a greater injury will thereby accrue to himself. And on the other hand, he who loves anyone will, by the same law, seek to benefit him. So nothing new here, but the Scoldion, I think, is memorable. It's worth paying attention to because here again, he's reiterating the idea that there are no objective, universal moral truths. Okay? By good, he says, he means every kind of pleasure. Okay? Everything that enhances our power of activity. And all that conduces thereto, especially that which satisfies our longings, our desires, whatsoever they may be. By evil, I mean every kind of pain, especially that which frustrates our longings. And now he recapitulates a passage in the Scoldium to Proposition 9. For I have shown that we in no case desire a thing because we deem it good, but contrariwise we deem a thing good because we desire it. And consequently, we deem evil that which we shrink from. Everyone, therefore, according to his particular emotions, judges or estimates what is good, what is bad, what is better, what is worse, and lastly, what is best and what is worst. And this principle for Spinoza is universally applicable, okay, to all of the modes of substance. Every individual, from the COVID virus to whole societies, makes its own judgments about good and evil. There's no universal good and evil as in traditional Western theology. So this applies not just to the passions, but universally to the active emotions just as much to the passions. And he takes this opportunity to define a few extra emotions. The emotion which induces a man to turn from that which he wishes, or to wish for that which he turns from, is called timidity, which he defines as the fear whereby a man is induced to avoid an evil which he regards as future by encountering a lesser evil. And he cites the proposition 28, which plays an important role. Remember, it's the proposition that says that we will try to act on so as to bring about whatever it is that we desire. And he's just said that we will always do this in order to bring about a good unless we fear that doing so will cause us to encounter a greater evil. If the evil in question is shame, then he says that this species of timidity will be called bashfulness. And if the desire to avoid a future evil be checked by fear of another evil, so that the man knows not what to choose. Fear becomes consternation, especially if both evils are feared to be very great. Okay, that's it for today. There's another 9 or 10 propositions where Spinoza continues to explore the byways of love and hate, but in a broader context than just romantic love. And we'll get to those next time.